Hola clase, este es Señor Wicks. We recently introduced this new dialogue, or beginning dialogue, and although we won't go over a lot of details with the dialogue, I do want to talk about how the dialogue relates to conjugating verbs. Let's go over it real quick. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Estoy muy bien, gracias. ¿Y tú? ¿Cómo estás tú? And of course, this is two guys talking. After I say, ¿Y tú? ¿Cómo estás tú? The other fellow would say, Estoy muy bien, gracias. Then we'd talk about, what's your name? ¿Cómo te llamas? Me llamo Señor Wicks. Mucho gusto. Okay, that being said, what I want to talk about is conjugating verbs. We're first going to talk about first, second, and third person. You might be familiar with this from literature, but you have to know about first, second, and third person so that you can talk about conjugating a verb. In Spanish, verbs change with every person. Let's talk about what first, second, and third person is. Anytime that you are speaking and you're using I, you're speaking in the first person. For example, I walk, I see, I do, I run. That's all in the first person singular. If we say we walk, we see, we do, that's first person plural. Whenever you say you, you're talking in the second person. You walk, you see, you do, you run. Now, the interesting thing in English, we can use you also for a plural. I can say you as in you guys. In the South, we usually say y'all. Y'all are. That's a you plural. That's second person plural. Third person plural, I'm sorry, third person singular is when we say use he, she, or it. He walks, he sees, he does, or she walks, she sees, or it walks. Now, if we use third person plural, we have no way to say he plural or she plural to make a distinction between male and female. We simply have to say they walk. Now, when we talk about conjugating a verb, the best example in English is to use the verb to be. To be is about the only verb that I can think of in English that changes in every position just like Spanish does. This is what I mean by that. If you look at the verb to be, if I'm going to say I can't say I be. I have to change to be to I am. Some people say I be, but it's not correct English. If I'm going to say first person plural, I say we are. So be changes to are. If I'm going to say you and use to be changes to you are. Same thing with the plural. If I want to say you are or y'all are. And then the verb changes again when we go into third person. When we say he or she, we can't say be or am or are. We have the verb changes to is. He is, she is, or it is. And then when we talk about third person plural, to be changes to they are. Now in English, usually the verbs don't change in every position like to be does. Let's look back at our verbs that we used in our first example. First person singular, I walk. Plural, we walk. Second person singular, you walk. You plural, you walk. But in third person, we have to add a little s to walk. He walks, she walks, he sees, she sees, it walks. I can't say he walk. I have to add an s to it. And then when we go to the plural, we drop that s back like all the other positions. They walk, they see. So most verb conjugation in English is pretty simple. Just add an s on the third person singular. The exception of that, of course, is to be. The important thing about this is Spanish is like to be. Every Spanish verb is going to change in every position. Let's look at what I'm talking about. In Spanish, there are two verbs for to be. There's to be for temporary conditions, like, for example, I'm happy. I am happy. But 10 minutes from now, I may not be happy. I'm sick. I'm sick today, but I may not be sick tomorrow. So those are temporary conditions. I can say I am a man. Well, that's permanent, because when I wake up tomorrow, I'm still going to be a man. And you would use the verb ser for permanent conditions, and you use estar for temporary conditions. So let's look how estar conjugates. When I want to use the first person singular, the word for I in Spanish is yo. And if I want to say I am, I say yo estoy. Now, because estoy is the form of a star that only goes with yo, I can leave yo off in a sentence. That's why in our dialogue we said estoy muy bien. It's the same as saying yo estoy, but I can leave the yo off. The word for we in Spanish is nosotros. And the way estar changes, it changes to estamos. Nosotros estamos. The second person singular is estás. The word for you in Spanish is tú. Actually, Spanish has two words for you. There's a formal and an informal. The informal, the one you'd use with your friends, is tú. And the way you'd use estar with tú is tú estás. If you were talking to someone you want to show respect to, such as an adult or a teacher, someone like that, you would instead use the word usted. Usted means you formal. The verb for tú is estás. Tú estás. You are. The verb for usted, you drop that little s and say usted está. Now in Spain, they also have a you formal, which is vosotros, but that's used only in Spain, so I'm not going to teach it. We'll talk about it more later. So the only you forms would be tú or usted. Now the third person singular is él or ella. Él means he, ella means she, and it is está, just like usted is está. If we're going to make a plural third person, it is ustedes. Ustedes kind of means like y'all. Ustedes están. We change that ending to be an N. Ellos is plural for he, meaning they, all males. Ellas is the plural for female, meaning they, all females. Ellos or ellos están. So I don't want to spend too much time right now talking about all of this information here. I just want you to be able to look at the dialogue and know how these words come into play. So you see, when we say, hola, ¿cómo estás? Remember, estás means you are. How, como, with a little asterisk, means how. So how you are is how are you? ¿Cómo estás? I don't have to say you, because estás only goes with you. ¿Cómo estás tú? I can say it, but I leave it tú off here. The next line, estoy, muy bien. Estoy means I am. I don't have to say I, because estoy only goes with I. Muy bien means very well. Muy means very. Bien means well. And gracias means thank you. So this is, I'm very well, thank you. How are you? I'm very well, thank you. Then the nice thing to say in this dialogue is y tú. Remember the E, the Y, E means and, pronounce it E, and you. So the first person says, how are you? Second person says, I'm fine. And you? How are you? ¿Cómo estás tú? Now, of course, we didn't put it in the dialogue here, but that person would have to answer, estoy muy bien, gracias. But the next part of the conversation, ¿Cómo te llamas? That llamas is the to form of llamar, L-L-A-M-A-R. Llamar means to call. ¿Cómo te llamas? That means how do you call? And this little te means yourself. How do you call yourself? Well, what that really means in English is what is your name? That's how we say, that's how we use como instead of que. Que is what? Como is how. ¿Cómo te llamas? How do you call yourself? The next line is me llamo, and then your name. Me llamo means I call. If I put me with it, it's I call myself. So if I wanted to say me llamo Roberto, I would say me llamo Roberto, is I call myself Roberto. And then, of course, we close that dialogue with mucho gusto. Well, anyway, this lesson was just to give you a little heads up about first, second, and third person, to let you know there's two verbs that mean to be. There's two ways to say you in Spanish, tú and usted. And when you're using this dialogue, I don't want you to be like a parrot and simply repeat what is said to you. I want you to understand the sentence and be able to reply to it. Okay, that's all for now. I'm glad you watched. We'll talk about this in class. Adios, buenas noches.